I am now recording.
Mm.
I have a cool catchphrase now that you haven't heard yet, so you get to hear it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I forgot it. Hello, Moonwatchers and Stargazers, and welcome to the first episode of the Compendium Cast. I am your host, Jason Ashcraft. I am here with Carlos Alvarez, and we will be talking about the movie A Trip to the Moon from 1902, or Les Voyages dans la Lune, as they say. How you doing, Carlos?
Oh, I'm doing good, man.
Good. It's good to see you. It's good to have you here for the first official episode of the Compendium Cast. I felt it was very fitting to talk about what might be considered the first ever sci-fi film.
Sure.
And kind of get into it. So we both recently just watched it. What were your initial thoughts watching this movie from 1902?
So I've seen it before. It's as entertaining, weird, and kind of pointless as it was the last time I seen it. But it also kind of made me think when I was watching it. I'm like, does this really qualify as science fiction, or is it more like science fantasy?
Wow. Yeah, dude. I
have thoughts.
Wow, Carlos has got me speechless on the first episode. Because I feel like I agree. And you know what's funny is actually some things I'm going to talk about near the end of this. I think the director would agree with you too, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there is like a big distinction between the two, right? I mean, science fiction being kind of like 9 times out of 10 is more of like a cautionary tale of, something we should be aware of and maybe be aware of. Whereas science fantasy, although, I mean, there's probably some dividing lines with that, but more like, like Star Wars is science fantasy, but that's more like a space opera kind of fantasy. But I don't know. It kind of struck me when I was watching it. I'm like, there's like aliens and, all that kind of shit. And,
right.
And, and like a bunch of, nobody thought to bring food or anything like that. The kind of things that would be confining in an actual legit hardcore science fiction movie or story. It just seems to kind of go out the window with this, and it almost comes more fantastic.
Yeah, and you could argue again like it was 1902, but at this time, people like H.G. Wells were already writing fantastic novels.
Yep.
Sure. But like I said, where I feel the director would agree with you is when I was kind of looking things up on the movie is meant to be highly satirical.
Okay. I see
exactly. So it makes like no pretense whatsoever to be scientifically plausible, right?
Okay.
And so with that,
science fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Like with that in mind, it's like he wasn't, when he was making it, he wasn't trying to be like, well, how would we actually do it? What could actually work? Right. So yeah, dude, just starting off hot with that deep thought. But yeah, so you know what? Hey, everybody, welcome to the Compendium Cast. And this is a science fantasy film that we're going to be talking about today, called A Trip to the Moon from 1902. Yeah, I was reading like the only sort of thing that might even be considered close to like science fact is sort of when they land at the end of the movie, right into the water, which is something that space missions do now.
Yeah.
Other than that, as we'll get into when we talk about the movie, there's a lot of things that we know is like they really suspended the disbelief in this one, right? But
well,
just a little bit.
I mean, even when they landed in the water, which is about the most, probably scientifically accurate thing, there was like shadows of like salamanders and shit. So I'm just like, where did they land that there's like salamanders?
For real. So the director and writer, and I apologize to everybody now, this is a French film. I will, if you're French and you listen to this, thank you. One, I don't know how this got to France, but I apologize in advance. Yeah. It was by Georges Méliès. He actually did in 1907, he did a short silent film of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is another classic, arguably science fiction film, maybe. In 1896, so this guy's been doing movies since like the beginning. He did The House of the Devil. Never seen it. Don't know what it's about, but the internet tells me that's one of his most popular ones. So there it is. The key cast, and here's an interesting thing too. This movie, so back in the day, was before they actually put credits in films. So no one was like actually credited when the movie came out. There was no credit scene. There was none of that.
Well, I mean, it's not really it's probably not like there's any kind of Actors Guild coming after anybody or something, since there was also no talking. But
yeah, and that's the thing too, is even this is a silent film, but as some silent films would have dialogue come up on the screen in text, this one does not. It's literally, it's all visuals for this one. So I don't remember who anybody is as we talk about this movie. So just it's dudes going to the moon. Yeah. But I will tell you who they are, and then so George himself, Georgius, the
director.
Yeah, the director. He plays the Professor Barbin Folius. He's the astronomer leading the expedition. We have Victor Andre as just an astronomer. Bliat Baron as a female astronomer. And that's the thing too. They don't even have like names as their characters. They're just, except for the professor, right? There's like 5 guys who go. We don't know who they are. We don't know who any of the aliens are that we'll talk about. It doesn't matter. It don't matter. It's been over 100 years. It don't matter. So
they'll get over it.
They'll get up. Yeah,
they're over it.
Yeah. The synopsis. So released in 1902, right? A Trip to the Moon is regarded as one of the first science fiction films, but as we just cracked the code here with Carlos, it is a science fantasy film. It was inspired by Julius Verne's I don't know, from the Earth to the Moon, and actually H.G. Wells' The First Men in the Moon. So it's a 13-minute silent film that chronicles an ambitious expedition to the moon led by a group of astronomers. So this is also where it's wild, right? They construct a spacecraft that they launch themselves to the moon, but it's like a huge fucking cannon. So, which I love it. Like they shoot a cannon to the moon. They inhabit some lunar inhabitants called the Selenites, I believe is what they're called. Like again, that's not really, it's like you wouldn't know that unless you went and looked it up, right? There's no way to know it in the film. And they return triumphantly to Earth. So
after the main guy, I guess it was the director, you said, right? He had like the white beard. Yeah, that guy was cracking me up, man. He was going like full beast mode on everybody. Every one of those aliens that comes at him, he just like bam. Watch him explode and shit, yeeting him over the fucking side.
Right.
I was like, this is fun. I could watch this for like about another 2 minutes or something. Yeah.
So let's get into the movie. It's a 13-minute film, so we'll see how much can I stretch this out. I don't know. So we start with the opening scene, which is just probably one of my favorites because it's supposed to be like a counseling of astronomers, but they all look like fucking wizards. Yeah, like they're literally in wizards' robes.
Yeah. With the long white beards and
wizards' hats and
academic room and stuff like that. But it looks more like they're about to summon something or something or whatever.
Yeah, like so they're all standing there talking, debating, whatever they're doing, and then.
But I guess to the uneducated, high-level science would have been looked at as sorcery. So
that's fair.
There is
You
there's that might have even been intentional, kind of like, making a statement about that or something. I don't know.
These directors and their statements, bro.
Well,
but you might be right, because eventually in this scene they actually remove the robes and change into more, I guess, civilian style clothes for the time before they actually get into the rocket. So maybe it was a point to be made. What I found interesting, and maybe you have some insight to this. So some people come in and they're followed by these women holding what I assume were like telescopes.
Mm-hmm.
And she hands them to the astronomers, and then they just turn into chairs. Right? Yeah, and I don't know why.
I don't know, man.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know that there was. I don't know that was there was really a point to that. I think
That's what I'm saying.
Weird.
Like they bring in like these telescopes, hand them to the men. They put them up in the air, and then they turn into chairs, and then they sit on them. So I was like, what is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's probably just a weird edit.
Yeah.
I mean, but like movie magic was not really bringing its A game at that time. So
for that though, and we'll get into it. There are some pretty beautiful shots.
Sure.
Or maybe not shots is the wrong word, but like stage setups in this film. Like the what's the word? Not stage setups, but help me figure it out before I have to make a cut. Props, maybe stage props.
Yeah.
The stage props are really good.
Yeah.
Like every scene is to me
like
is very beautiful. Set pieces. Thank you. Yeah, we got there.
Yeah.
We got there, baby. Even this room they're in is just beautiful because everything was like hand painted, dude. Like all these shots.
Well, I think a lot of it was kind of like stuff like this was what you would see when you went to a theater back then.
Yeah.
So early movies and film and stuff like that was really just kind of capturing what you would have seen at a actual theater, and with like the set pieces and lighting and stuff, but they were just capturing it on film for the first time. Because
with theater, it is very heavily like physical acting to portray what's going on.
And everybody's talking really super loud and stuff because you have to be able to project to the back rows and stuff like that. So
yeah. So our professor boy, he's drawn on the chalkboard his plans to go to the moon, and everyone gets up in an uproar, so we can just assume some people just don't agree with his plan, I guess. And this is where the women come back in, and
it's ludicrous. This is madness.
The astronomers are remnants of wizards, and it blends science and fantasy. So here we go, back to the science fantasy.
It's posing as a sci-fi film because it's like it's positing the idea of journeying to the moon when anybody else would have looked at that as just fantasy. But
yeah, exactly.
And kind of like looping back to the thing where it seems like everybody's like, mad at the dude or whatever. It's like, well, that's kind of like, that's kind of like historical anyway, isn't it? Like you get, a scientist that comes out and says some wildly crazy shit or whatever, and the mainstream academia, turns on him. I mean, this guy's nuts, he doesn't speak for us. We don't believe that shit, and then they do something wild or whatever, and turns out, 50 years after they're dead, everybody goes, hey, he was right. And the whole time we're assholes. But so I guess that's maybe what they were kind of showing in that, when everybody gets mad at the guy, and because he's like, hey, we can go up there.
Yep.
And they're like, this is heresy,
I wrote an entire album based on that. Question Everything. Go check it out. Helium Prime. Personal plug. So yeah, in these scenes we're talking about, all the stuff was hand painted colorization technique that was actually used in some of the versions of the films, which they're very pretty when you can see it in color. And they had to do it frame by frame, so it took a very long time. So after all this, they change into their clothes. We are now go to the next scene where they're building their capsule. It looks like a bullet, right? Because again, this is going to get shot out of a cannon, and this is how we're going to the moon. So, the astronomers come in and they're examining the capsule that's being built for the launch, and they kind of go in. And this is the thing I really appreciated with, again, just the scenes and the shots of these, is the blending of the background to the practical props on the stage were done really well. Because to me, the capsule almost looked like part of the background, but then at a certain point, they actually walk inside it. So I don't know. I think the thing that impressed me the most with this movie was all the stage props. This would have been a really cool play to get to see, I think.
Yeah.
If it was actually,
and it probably would have been if they even did half of the stuff, like in a theater presentation of it that they did in the movie version, it would still have made people going like, "Whoa!"
Exactly.
Except the difference being that, like, when you're looking at it in a theater, it's 3-dimensional. So it might have even been more impressive than seeing it in 2D, you know?
So this whole time they're just examining this capsule, and then they're showing the men at the end of this sort of scene standing on like a rooftop, and they're just like looking over a industrial landscape. I imagine 1902 was still very heavily in the industrial age. So maybe it was just sort of showing that, you know?
Yeah. Or just kind of making a, you know, kind of illustrating that this is the current state of the world, and now we're about to advance even further.
Right. Yeah, I knew you'd have some deep thought there for me.
It's not that
like, I'm just thinking, bro.
You know, I don't know if it's not that deep, but you know.
Yeah, dude. No, the world's about to change, man. Then we go to the launch. So they all go in, they all sit down in it, you know, in this bullet capsule. They show the scene of the cannon, and the way, again, it's this long fucking thing. And a guy just lights it like you'd light a fucking cannon at a circus or whatever. And you know, this scene required like multiple camera setups, which at the time that was not a common technique, you know. And then the women supposedly were supposed to symbolize like muses or celestial figures to add another mythical layer. I guess when I went into it with the mindset of first sci-fi film, so I'm looking for things of that, but it's like once you open up that other box, you see it for what it really is, you know. Then we get to the most famous scene of this film, parodied many times, it's been referenced many times, where we see the moon and we get closer and closer to it, and there's actually a face on the moon, and like a humanoid face, and then we see the capsule crash into its eyeball. Right. I tried to look up how they did this because there's clearly a real person's face there. Everything I could find about it, they said it was achieved by using like a combination of stop motion and dissolve techniques, as well as substitution splices, which all that's fine. But I was trying to find more information on the actual person, like who actually was the guy on the moon. I wasn't able to find any information on it. I couldn't find anything personally. Are you checking it out?
Yeah, I'm checking.
Yeah, see what you can find.
I don't know. God damn the internet.
What'd you find?
Why has it got to go right to porn?
What'd you type?
I tripped to the moon, man. Who played the moon? There's nothing, you know, weird about that. But yeah.
To the internet.
Yeah. I have to scrub my PC now.
So anyways, shout out to whoever played the moon. You're
man.
One.
Great job. You took one for the team.
So the men get off on the lunar surface, which arguably looks very different than what we know of the moon today. You know, they didn't quite get that right. What I really liked of this scene,
it was a 50-50 shot. I mean,
yeah, you know, they did their best. Also, actually, to go back though, just more on the moon surface itself, it just really was done well. Like it's like it almost looks like melting cheese. Or like, you know, like they just really did a good job with that.
And then they say that was like the thing, you know, some people used to think the moon was made of cheese.
Yeah. Like, yeah. And then like the man on the moon and it's made of cheese. So
that makes sense.
So what I loved about this scene is we see the earth rise, but I thought that was really cool because it's like the moon rising.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was supposed to emulate. But since they're on the moon, now the earth is like their moonlight, their earthlight, if you will. I just thought it was a cool shot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of imagination in that because, you know, how is anybody at that time supposed to know exactly? You're just guessing. You're like, I can see the moon, so I guess if I was on the moon, this is how Earth
would rise just like the moon does. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you think that? You know, but it's still there's a bit of imagination to it, you know, because of the fact that they don't really know. So, but
Then the capsule just
50-50.
randomly disappears. Sure, why not? Like literally fizzles out of existence.
Cloaking device.
And then the men just go to sleep. They're just like it's bedtime now. So they've just landed on the moon and it's bedtime. And so this is where we get a shot I was mentioned before. So the stars appear in the sky, and they start to see faces, and then they morph into what I assume is like Roman gods, right? Because there's like
Well, I think it goes back to the muse thing you were talking about.
And so we definitely see Saturn because it looks like Saturn. I couldn't figure out who the other ones were. But they could have been muses because they were women.
And also because all the planets and stuff were all named after Roman gods and all that kind of stuff. So it would make sense that any celestial body. I mean, every constellation and it's all named after like gods and demigods and all that kind of shit. So it would make sense that they would kind of like put a scene like that in there to kind of, I don't know, to put that idea forth or something. So
right. And then Saturn, I think it's him who like triggers this. He makes it start to like, I guess, snow.
No, Saturn's a dick.
Yeah, dude. He's like, they're sleeping. Fuck it. Here's some moon snow.
Dick move.
But this leads them underground.
Hello, fellow patriots. This is John Eagleman, and you may be a victim of the government's aerial chemtrails, which produce low T in men between the ages of 15 and 78. Have you felt sleepy, old, constipated, or feel an overwhelming urge that there isn't any good music anymore? Well, the Lords-fearing patriots over at Lords of the Trident have you covered. Each shirt in their store is guaranteed to block 78% of all the harmful gamma rays that Verizon bakes into their 5G coverage. Also, every order comes with a bottle of Dr. Raffelman's brain-boosting suppositories, guaranteed to put some pep in your step and grow back a ton of unnecessary hair. So, what are you waiting for? Fire up your 17 VPNs and go to lordsofthetrident.com/merch today. Hell yeah! lordsofthetrident.com/merch.
So they go down into a terrain I love this because I feel like in any old movie where we go to an underground terrain, it's all the same. There's giant mushrooms. There's the idea of like, for some reason, underground never evolved with the upper world. So like everything's still very prehistoric landscapes, giant mushrooms.
Which is still kind of accurate. Underground caverns, especially if they're completely cut off or something, they evolve their own like independent ecosystems. So that's why whenever they discover like a new cave or a new cavern or something, they find like, previously unseen types of fish and, whatever.
Right.
Because they evolve independently of everything else because they're sealed off. So they kind of create their own ecosystem. Mushrooms, I don't know. Sure, why not?
So then, though, to just why not? One of the dudes takes his umbrella out and it turns into a mushroom. And then it starts to grow really long. So I got nothing for that one either, but it is a thing that happens.
A lot of the mushrooms have some hallucinogenic properties or something. Basically, they're tripping balls on the moon.
Yeah, dude. Fuck. Why not? It's because of the low oxygen, probably, or lack of.
Right. Which is, they took into consideration with no helmets or anything.
Yeah, exactly. So completely accurate sci-fi film.
I honestly thought when I was watching it and they like launched, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is weird. Why are these guys all going to the moon with no food, no water, no not knowing if they're going to even be able to breathe? And
this was a day trip for them, man.
Well, yeah, I know. Obviously, I noticed now after,
they were back for dinner.
Watching, but when I was in the thick of it, and I was really deeply invested in this
13-minute film. Yeah,
I was like fucking 6 minutes deep, dude, and I was nothing else existed. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, they didn't bring any food, they didn't bring any water, they left all the women behind. How are they going to repopulate the moon? And then the mushrooms happened, and I didn't even care anymore because I'm like, okay, obviously this is just a head trip. So
we just figured it out. Right? This is not a sci-fi fantasy film. This is just a dude tripping on mushrooms.
Basically, yeah, like Alice in Wonderland or something.
Exactly.
Or Through the Looking Glass. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they go underground, right? We're underground, and they now encounter their first selenite. Is what we're calling it. So they encounter this humanoid, like sort of insect, alien.
Yeah.
And dude, he literally rubs his ass on the ground.
Yeah, he's scooting.
Yeah, like a dog does on your carpet.
He had the back legs up like this.
Yeah, dude. So maybe that's why they attacked them right away. They're like, oh, but maybe that was their hello. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, it's kind of like my cat. You know, like when he jumps on you and then he turns around, it's just his butthole right in your face. Like that's their way. Of, yo, what's up, bud?
Yeah, he was saying hello, and
yeah. So maybe the dude scooting at him was like, hey,
yeah. He gets struck by our professor and just explodes into dust.
He goes beast mode on him.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So this is where a ton more show up and capture the men. I think they kill a few more before they get captured.
Yeah. They take out a handful.
They now get brought sort of to this tribal and indigenous sort of area on the moon. So, you know, I guess when they were imagining what the moon would be like, they're like, oh, it's just some indigenous tribes.
Yeah, I figure it's like tribes up on the moon. Why wouldn't there be people up there?
Why not?
Why
not? And then I laughed because the professor, he breaks free. There's like, I guess what would be their king or whatever sitting on a throne, right? The king of the Centenites.
The cellulites.
He literally grabs him and throws him up over his body and like wrestle slams him to the ground. And that's because everybody, the scientific part of it, which makes this film sci-fi, is the difference in gravity on the moon can allow you to lift a full ass humanoid over your body. So
sure.
This is a science. We're back to it being a science fiction film. I'm now understanding the work they did in making it scientifically accurate.
Except they had no way of knowing what the gravity on the moon was.
Dude, they were ahead of their times, man.
50-50 shot. It's a 50-50, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they got it.
They weren't illustrating, and this is to demonstrate the fact that the moon's gravity is 1/8 of what the Earth's. No, it's 50-50.
Nah, dude, it's a science fiction film. I got
mushrooms and weak gravity. They got half of it right.
Yeah. 50-50 shot, like he said.
50-50 shot.
So all the men break out. This causes a huge fight between the aliens and our boys. So they get chased out. More aliens explode. Our heroes, quote, heroes. Yeah.
Our heroes.
So actually they had real acrobats playing the
acrobats. Transform. Roll out.
So they did that so they could get, you know, the mobility and stuff like that. So I thought that was I like when they do that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, contortionists and shit. You could tell like the one guy was like doing all sorts of rubbery stuff with his body. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's like a, you know, what did they call him back then? Those guys that could do all the crazy stuff. I know it's contortionist, but I thought there was like a special name for like the theater people, like the, you know, the vaudeville theater guys that would do all the crazy falls and stuff like that and act all rubbery and.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure.
I can't remember it, but yeah. But you could tell that they got people that could do that stuff. So I guess, I mean, your average person can't. So that probably made it look that much more alien.
All the exploding effects were done with like practical pyrotechnics and just, you know, editing.
Blow shit up. Dynamite.
Yep. They run back to their capsule, which is now conveniently on a cliff. This part cracked me up too. That we'll get to. So
there's a whole lot wrong with this next sequence, but go ahead.
I would love to hear your thoughts. If I don't pinpoint them, yeah. So they actually capture one of the humanoid aliens. You know, it's just on a cliff of the moon. They're hanging out. They get back in, and one of the guys. So R.I.P. to this guy. Maybe I guess he sacrificed himself. He hangs off the front with some rope, so it can sort of start to push it down over the cliff because they need to drop it off the cliff. And then it finally falls when one of the Selenites jumps on the back of it, propelling it over. This is how they get back to Earth, by the way. They just fall off the cliff on the moon, and takes them back to the Earth.
Down
into the ocean.
Into the ocean with the salamanders.
Yeah, so by this logic, the moon is straight above us.
Right.
Perfectly. Yeah.
I mean, again, for the time, why not? You're looking up at the moon. Up.
Yeah, for real.
So if you want to come back from the moon down to Earth, you go down.
Was there anything else that you found wrong with this scene you're saying?
Well, no, that was the whole thing that I thought was funny. Was that, you know, their way of returning was to just go down. So
yeah,
you know,
off a cliff.
Right.
Like, thankfully this
deeper part of the moon, you would naturally just fall to the earth instead, right?
Yeah, because on Earth, if you fall off a cliff, you're going to hit just more ground. But here, they just happen to find the cliff that just you fall into space.
Right.
So yeah.
Which also shows that they had no idea about the gravity thing when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Because even though it fell down, they didn't know about weaker gravity. Because then it should have you know what I mean? I don't know. Actually, no, that was bullshit. Everything I just said was bullshit.
We know
it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
it's genius.
Yep. So
I think the guy who was holding on to the rope wasn't that the main guy. Wasn't it the dude with the beard?
I couldn't tell any of them apart, to be honest, man. But we'll go with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was, because I think it was. Maybe it was like a moment of what he thought would have been like a hero moment. Self-sacrifice or something like that. And,
right. But he's also there at the end, so he somehow got in the sure, why not?
Because because why not?
Because why not?
They didn't have oxygen or anything like that on the moon. Why would you need it to travel through space, or for that matter, why would you need it underwater? Yeah,
so they land back on the ocean. They get picked up by some sailors, and now there's a big celebration for them. There's a parade, and here's where the humans lost me, right? Because now they're like sort of parading this Selenite around, like, he's a prisoner, he's an attraction,
like King Kong,
kind of. Yeah, exactly. Just like King Kong, sort of symbolizing, their dominance over the unknown. But it's like, we really just invaded the moon, killed the, the
king.
Just
the moon king.
Attacked the local tribe, and then captured one, brought it back, and celebrated this great victory of ours. And the final scene, they're dancing around a statue that has a man standing with his foot on the moon, right? Again, showing that we've conquered the moon, and the moon he's stepping on mirrors the humanoid face moon with the rocket in it and everything. I actually found out the director had very strong anti-imperialist. That was the whole point. It was satire, right? He was mocking the idea of it. So it's like, all right, I'm back with you. I'm back with you, man. The film scholar Matthew Solom notes that in the last part of the film, the parade, the commemoration sequence, which is missing in some prints, actually. So if you watch one without it, I promise you it's there, is especially forceful in this regard, right? He talks about how Milias, the director, he had previously worked on anti-Bolingist political cartoon. He was a political cartoonist.
Okay.
So mocking imperialist domination in the film by presenting his colonial conquerors as So that's another reason why all these characters are just essentially bumbling around, who mercilessly attack the alien life forms they meet and return with a mistreated captive. So it really paints the better picture where they're bumbling, they're way over the top, the whole wizard aspect of it. Like you really see it's meant to be satirical, right? So it's sort of mocking a lot of that, but that's the movie. So it's really only a 13-minute film. We've talked longer than 13 minutes about this movie. Probably said more than mattered, but that is A Trip to the Moon. Closing thoughts of this film is I probably won't watch it again. I have no need to go
I concur.
Back. Yeah. I see myself having no need to be like, you know what? I could really go for A Trip to the Moon.
I feel like I missed something. I got to watch it again.
Yeah. Some friends come over. What do you want to do? Dude, let's watch A Trip to the Moon, bro. Yeah.
No.
So
only if they bring mushrooms.
So now we're going to get into a segment called Gonna Have Me Some Fun.
I'm gonna have me some fun. I'm gonna have me some fun. I'm gonna have me some fun. I'm gonna have me some fun. I'm gonna have me some fun.
And this is where we are going to compare some science fiction to science fact.
Okay.
Depending on the movie, we'll do book to movie comparisons. This was not based on a book, so we will not do that one. Some science fictions to science facts. This movie could be a lot of fun for it because there's a lot of parallels. Obviously, the big one, right, is A Trip to the Moon. What is the science fact counterpart of that? Well, we eventually did actually go to the moon.
Yep.
It was very different. Could arguably arguably say not as exciting, but it was still pretty exciting.
I guess the if you went up there expecting to find the Moon King and a bunch of moon hula girls and all that stuff back when they went up into space, then yeah, you might have been disappointed. But also being on the moon was probably pretty neat for the persons that were on the moon. So
yeah,
I
would think so.
You got to manage your expectations.
Well, I want space kings, moon kings. So
we all do.
I know. Someday. Yeah.
I want everything to be John Carter of Mars and all that stuff, but
right. So space travel, right? Yes. So in this movie, they're launched out in a big giant cannon. My guess is that would not work. Wouldn't get very far. So modern space travel, we rely on rockets, right?
Yes.
So that's really all I gotta say about that one. Cannons versus rockets, right? So a cannon launch would subject passengers to lethal G-force.
I was just about to say that, but yeah.
Yes.
I think the thrust you would need to launch an artillery shell with a person in it to clear gravity from the planet would probably leave them, I don't know, like just basically a pool of muck on the inside. Yeah. It liquefied them.
Yeah, might not be worth it, right?
No.
And then, of course, the moon's surface, right? In this, it's depicted with breathable atmosphere and strange creatures and beautiful landscapes.
Right.
The Earth or the moon is quite literally the opposite of all of that. So,
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's like
sorry for spoilers on the moon, everybody. But yeah, if you just watch,
you don't know by now, tough.
Yeah, if you watch this film, you're like, damn, dude, that's the moon. Sorry, spoilers. It's not.
What?
So I think we kind of last thing is we kind of mentioned it. The closest thing in reality is the reentry and splashdown, right? So in the movie, the capsule splashes into the ocean, returning to Earth, right? Yep. So the counterpart in real life is, this method actually mirrors real life space missions such as Apollo's splashdowns, but they need parachutes for deceleration. Again, these dudes are just dropping full speed. So I did write down that it mirrors real life, but I think what's fun is to think about like this was really first. There were no space missions yet in 1902, right?
Yeah, no, but I mean, again, like thinking about things, from the perspective of what you know versus what you don't. If you're going to drop down from something back then, you'd probably want to land on a bunch of pillows or water as opposed to the ground, right?
Right.
So it would make sense that they would kind of choose, you know what I mean? Like it probably would have looked really, well, actually everything in the movie looked kind of silly, but it probably would have looked, it might have taken away from the intent if they had the thing drop down from the moon and then land on a bunch of like throw pillows.
So for this movie though, that I feel like that would have been funny in this film.
Yeah, but then it would have been comedy and not satire, I think.
Fair enough. There is a distinction. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just with everything else over the top, but
yeah. They were mocking certain ideas and stuff, but they weren't intentionally trying to make the movie slapstick either.
Right. Fair point. So there is a trip to the moon, everybody. Let us know what you thought of that movie. Before we get out of here with some closing statements, closing remarks, just Carlos, anything you want to mention, plug about yourself, what you got going on? So, this is the plug time, baby.
Plug time. Let's see. Still getting some pretty awesome reviews for the Shadow Dance album that came out earlier this year. So if you like epic power metal with some progressive elements, buy my album.
Do it.
And like I was telling you earlier, the Beholder album, we're kind of like getting some last minute things sorted out for when that releases in a few months. And, so the good news is, like I said, it'll be available on vinyl apparently. So as well as CD. So that's really cool because I've never actually had one of my releases done on vinyl. So that's pretty neat.
Nice.
I don't even have anything to play vinyl on, but that's still pretty neat. So
no, I think that's really cool. So yeah, if you guys like all that, please go check out Carlos's music, man.
Yep. Beholder Doom and Shadow Dance. There you go.
Hell yeah. So next episode, we're doing Frankenstein from 1931, directed by James Well, based on the book written by Mary Shelley. So this might be another odd one for everybody, but we're going to kind of discuss, a lot of people consider this to be the first science fiction story ever. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the movie. So keep an eye out for that one. And, this is a brand new baby podcast. So first episode, right? So if you enjoyed us kind of talking about a trip to the moon, check us out. Give us a star. That's what we're supposed to ask for. Not 1 star, 5-star I hear is where we want it. Yeah. So, I would say find it where you find all podcast streaming platforms. But if you're hearing me say this, you've already found it. So good job. And we'll see you next time for Frankenstein.
Yep.
Come and feel the light of the Lord shining down upon your face and join the congregation in holy praise. We welcome you to the Church of Our Lords every Monday and Friday evenings for celebratory masses. If you can't attend in person, well, that's no problem because Pastor Francis has hooked up our mass to the World Wide Web. Simply visit lordsofthetrident.church. That's lordsofthetrident.church to join our flock. This is Cool U.S. Pastor Greg saying, praise the Lords.